If you want to learn or continue learning how to do a natural full face with a buttery base, this video is perfect for you.
It's not that I don't want you here. It's something about the way you stare into my eyes.
What's up, babes? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your very first time here, my name is Maya, and today we're going to be doing an updated makeup for beginners video. I think about half of my subscribers originated from my first makeup for beginners video, and if you forgot, here's the thumbnail, and I will make sure to link that video in case you haven't seen it. But that was 5 years ago, and a lot has changed in my makeup routine and how I personally do makeup. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced in makeup application, I feel like this video could help you because I did sprinkle in a lot of tips and tricks that I use specifically for my technique. But for my beginners though, this is especially for you. I wanted to do a full tutorial that's extremely detailed. It's really detailed, going over each step in the process. So before we hop into it, please make sure that you hit subscribe below if you have not yet, so that you are updated when new videos come out. Also make sure you hit that notification bell as well, so that you are updated when new videos go up. I did include chapters so that you can hop to whatever part of the face you want to focus on, but if you are actually gonna sit down and do makeup with me, go ahead and grab a snack, a drink, and your makeup bag, and let's get started. So I am so excited to be doing an updated version of this video. It is long overdue, 5 years to be exact. I've changed a lot. And so has my makeup routine. So let's get into it. This is gonna be in the order that I like to do my makeup and that I believe makes the most sense. You do not have to do it in the order that I do it, but I do believe that the order that I go in creates the most beautiful, buttery, natural looking base. So that's why I do it the way I do it. First things first, I always make sure that I moisturize my skin. Recently, I've been using the Clinique Moisture Surge, and I will put this all over the face and concentrate it in the places where I know that I need a little bit more moisture. Especially since we're gonna go in with powders and everything, you wanna make sure that the skin is nicely moisturized even before primer. I am a brow first type of girl, so I will go in and make sure my brows are dry and then go in with a brow pencil. I like a really skinny brow pencil. The ones that I love the most are the Anastasia Brow Wiz, Benefit Precisely My Brow, and also the Secure the Brow pencil from LYS. Particularly, I love a brow pencil that allows me to create brow-like strokes. I will follow the hair strokes that I already have as far as direction, and I will just start to draw my brow in. This part of the process is going to be very different for most people because we all like our brows different. And a lot of people do it actually during the makeup application. Usually the brow pencil will have a spoolie on the end, so I will go into that and just kind of blend the hair and the strokes together. That way we have the most natural looking brow. Really important for your pencil to be on the skinnier side. That way you know that you're able to create the brow hair strokes. I personally like to sculpt my brows with concealer, and I will usually use a very flat type brush just like this one to go underneath and sculpt them out. If I were doing my brows just by themselves, I would go in with like a skin tone foundation or balm or something at the top. But for now, we're just gonna leave it. And these are the brows. So before we go into our complexion products, we need a primer. So primer is not something you can skip. It's important because it does create a barrier between your skin and the foundation to make sure you have an even application. But also different primers do different things. Some primers are really tacky, like this Milk Hydro Grip. They really grip that foundation. Other ones like the NARS Light Reflecting Hydrating Primer and the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base are more moisturizing, and they hydrate the skin underneath the foundation. There's also other primers that will capture your sweat, like the Secure the Sweat Dry Till Dawn Primer from One Size. But I'm gonna go into the Bobbi Brown Primer. This one works as a moisturizer and a primer, so I love when a product does double duty. So this one I would say is both a primer and a moisturizer, so you could skip the moisturizer part. Ideally, you wait for your primer to dry down before you go in with any complexion products. That way it doesn't necessarily mix with your foundation or your concealer. I'm also wearing the topical Slick Salve. So I usually will use this as a lip primer during the time while I'm doing my makeup until I do my lip product. Now we can get into the face. Let's start with foundation. There's multiple things you need to consider when it comes to foundation. The first one being finding your correct shade. Now, we're gonna make this real quick because we wanna focus on the application. However, I'm a person that always recommends matching your neck and your chest. Now, I understand, especially as women of color, we have different shades, different things going on, but if you can do it, I would match this color instead of matching your face, because foundation is about to cover up your face, so what's the point of matching it? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna show you guys 3 different shades of this Turn Up the Base Full Beat foundation, which is from One Size, and we're gonna swatch 3 different shades. This first one is Dark Deep 25. I'm also gonna add a little bit of this on the face as well. The next one is Dark Deep 35, and the last one is Dark Deep 45. Obviously, it's not this first one, which is too light, but these two seem like they are in the running. However, if you look closely, the one in the middle has more of a red tone, whereas the one on the end looks like it will match perfectly with my undertone. It literally just disappears right into the skin. So that is how you want to find your shade. But if you are a beginner, I would recommend first to play around with foundation sticks or like a foundation type balm. This stick right here is from Relevant, and this shade is Rebel 8. For beginners, I would recommend this because it's so precise. I can put it wherever I want it. Another type I would recommend is like a balm. This one is the Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm in the shade 9. It's pretty easy just to go in with a brush and apply it exactly where you want it to be. Both of these options make it really easy to place the foundation, and it makes it very easy for you to blend it out as well. And while we're at it, I did want to let you guys know Morphe did just send me a full set of brushes. I'm gonna be using these brushes throughout the tutorial. That way I can show you guys the sizes, the shapes of the brush that you want to apply each product with. And it's all one collection. So if you wanna go get the whole collection, it gives you less work to do. So when it comes to applying foundation, there's multiple types of brushes that you can use. I usually like to go for like a kabuki type brush, which looks like this. It has very, very dense bristles. There's also another version of the kabuki brush which has more of an angle to it. And though Morphe has this one listed as more of a contour brush, I like to use this one for foundation as well. One more foundation brush is this one. It's more of like a flat paddle type brush, and I'll use this one just to apply it, but not necessarily to blend it out. The foundation that I'm using today, which is my favorite one currently, is the new foundation from Patrick Ta. Usually I'll do a couple pumps on the back of my hand, and then I will place the foundation all over the face with my finger, and then I'll go straight into blending. I always recommend starting off with about 1 or 2 pumps of foundation and then building up from there. That way you can determine how much coverage you want and you're not overwhelmed with product. Liquid foundation can be a little bit tricky. It can leave streaks. It can be hard to blend if you're not used to it. So if you are a true beginner, definitely stick with the sticks and balms and have this be like your level 2 type of foundation. This foundation in particular is a luminous foundation. If you can see, it does kind of give that more skin-like luminous finish. But there are foundations that are matte where you wouldn't have this luminous finish, and also ones that are a little bit more sheer, serum-like, skincare-like. One pro tip that I would give after foundation is to go in with a sponge and then just pat over everything that you apply to make sure there's no lines of demarcation and that the product is nice and even everywhere on the face. Now that the face is looking like an egg, let's move on to concealer. So concealer is going to help to cover any dark circles or any imperfections that you have, but it also will help to bring dimension back into the face. So foundation gives us a nice even skin tone pretty much to be a great base for everything else, where your concealer is going to bring the lighter areas back in. When we look in the mirror, our face is never just one color, obviously, especially if you black. So we bring all the shadows back into the face using product, but it kind of perfects it a little bit and exaggerates it. That's what we want. If you're looking for great coverage but something more skin-like, I would go into the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer or the Lancome All Over Concealer. If you're looking for something that's blendable and like butter, definitely go into the One Size Turn Up the Base Concealer. This is perfect for that buttery concealer base. If you're looking for coverage, definitely go for this Huda Beauty Faux Filter Concealer. This will give you coverage all day and it will last. Another great skin-like concealer is the Makeup by Mario Concealer. I'm gonna use the Lancome Teint Eau Concealer today. Like I said, this is the shade 460. You wanna go into a shade that's about 1 to 2 shades lighter than your complexion in the areas where you want to brighten. On the corner of the eye to really lift the face. We wanna take this down the nose so that we can create a nose contour if that's what you want. Or you can skip that. Also above the lip, on the middle of the chin, and in the middle of the forehead. So whenever I apply concealer and I know that it's going to be blended out towards the skin, I will flick it in that direction. So I did that here, and then I did that here as well. That's gonna help with blendability and kind of make that seamless once you blend it. If you want your concealer to have more coverage, definitely give it a second, okay? You can spray it with some fixing spray. I'm gonna use the Max Fix Plus and spray the face while this is drying down. Fixing spray is different from setting spray. This is not locking it in. This is just making the product more skin-like. That way it blends and it looks more natural. We're gonna use this multiple times throughout the tutorial. We're gonna blend out one side of the face with a brush, and we're gonna blend the other side of the face out with a sponge. If you go in with a brush, these are the two types of brushes shape-wise that you want to lean towards. If you use a brush, you need a little bit more experience, I would say. Blending out your concealer with a brush is a lot harder. And as you can see, I'm kind of tapping it out versus swiping it because that takes away some of the product. So you tap it out and you tap it down and kind of like ombre it out into the skin. But this takes some skill. So that's why I said if you're a beginner, don't even bother with trying to do this. Like, do not do it. It is a great thing to learn though, because it does help to keep most of the coverage of the concealer. With that being said, sponges do tend to pick up a little bit more product. So if you use a sponge only, more than likely it's gonna suck up some of the product, but it's a lot easier to blend out. Obviously, we are not swiping again, we're just pressing and blending it out into the foundation. For the nose, I kind of just take my sponge, regardless if I'm using a brush or not, and just press it down. From here, I will take the sponge, even if I used a brush, and I will go over where the concealer meets the foundation. This will help to marry the two and make sure that we don't have any lines of demarcation. If you want to do this with a clean sponge, that would be great. But this is where that detail work comes in to make sure that everything is looking seamless. This part is optional. Just want to throw that out there. If you like the brightened look, a lighter under eye, just a more dramatic type of look, this is your time to go into a lighter concealer. I'm still using the Lancome Teint Eau Ultra Wear Concealer. This one is in the shade 420 though, and I'm just focusing this right in the middle of the face. This shade is so light that we do not want to put it everywhere that we put the other concealer. This one is specifically to just give you a little extra glam, a little extra, you know. So we don't want to put that absolutely everywhere. This concealer, I would say we can let sit as well, but we gonna work smarter, not harder. Let's get into our cream bronzer while this concealer dries down. You may be wondering, do I do a cream bronzer or do I do a contour? Here's the difference. A bronzer really adds warmth to the face. It kind of makes you look more sun-kissed, so it does work to bring the shadows back into the face. However, it's more of a warm tone shadow, whereas a contour might be a little bit more cooler tone because it really creates actual shadows of the face. Also, a contour can tend to be a little harsh only because of the shades available for contour, but I like to bronze because it looks more natural on the face. There's 3 different forms that you can use when it comes to a cream bronzer. The first one is kind of like a palette. You can dip into it and apply it directly onto the face. This is the cream bronzer from Fenty Beauty. The next one is kind of like a blush. This one is actually a blush, but I use it as a bronzer because of the shade. So this is one that kind of has a wand and you can apply it directly onto the face. And the next one is a stick. This one also is applied directly onto the face and then blended out. My recommendation would be to use a stick because it's very precise. You can put it exactly where you want it to go. And when you're doing a bronzer, you want to frame the face, emphasize the cheekbones. You would think maybe I should draw it here. No. You want to bring it from your hairline up here and down. This is the kind of brush you want to use for your cream bronzer. It has an angle, which makes it easier for you to really sculpt out the face. When I come here, I'm kind of patting it in, but not ever going down. That's not what we want. When it comes to framing the perimeter of the face, you want to push it back into the hairline. If you can tell, this is creating some lines of demarcation as well. So back to our trusty sponge, we're gonna go over where those meet and just marry them. This detail work is really important because that's how you're gonna make it look super seamless. Now I'm gonna go back and blend out my concealer. And I usually will go in with a sponge to blend this out because I kind of want some of that product to be picked up so it's not too light. Now, if you notice, if anybody who's a beginner, you might have this problem. You got this going on and now it's kind of seeping into where the eyes are and it's not blended. I'm gonna take my concealer brush and just kind of push that color up into the eye socket. We're gonna finish off the cream bronzer by putting it on the nose. Now, everyone does not have to do this way like me. So I like to make sure my bronzer is going into my brows and coming down. That way my nose is defined, but it also is a natural progression from the shadows of the face. And I'm gonna use this more looser concealer brush to blend this down. But this might be easier to do if you do your brows later on because you don't have to worry about, you know, going around the brows. But for me, it's not an issue. I just kind of flick it into where the brows are. And this is also where you have the freedom to really create the shape that you want for your nose. I am a nose contourer. So sometimes I'll lose the shape or the middle part and it starts to get too skinny when I go into the bronzer. So I'll just work with it. I just added a little bit more concealer right there in the middle to make sure that my nose is not getting too skinny because I don't like a super skinny nose contour. This whole part of sculpting, putting the colors where they need to go, y'all, this is the whole face. It's really important to spend a lot of time doing your cream and liquid products because that is the face. The powder, which comes after all of this, just sets everything in place and emphasizes what you've already done. So take your time learning how to do your cream base and learning how to blend, marrying the colors and the shades. That's what's gonna make your face look flawless. I'm going over this again to marry the colors and make sure everything is seamless. I will end up with some concealer here on my beauty blender. And usually I will take that right underneath without adding product to it and just kind of creating a bit of a highlight. This helps to start create that sculpted look. And when you do that, you always want to act like you're coming directly to the corner of your mouth. The last cream product we need is a cream blush. If you watched my Makeup for Beginners video 5 years ago, then you know it did not include blush because I was not a blush girly, but I've matured since then. I have really matured because, baby, you gotta strangle me to make me leave the house without a blush. So there's pretty much two different types of cream blush that you can use. You can use a wand. This one is from Huda Beauty. And for this one, you just apply the color directly to the face and then blend it out, which I'm gonna argue is a little bit more difficult. So I recommend using a blush that's in a palette, in particular, one that is in a duo or a trio palette. This one is from Patrick Ta. The shade is She Goes to the Gym. Also, I just wanna note, because if you're doing this with me, you probably noticed this as well. Under the eyes, we're getting real creasy. I know. Under the eyes, it's creasing like crazy, but it's okay. It's fine. Just leave it for now. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. I'm gonna take the blush at the top, which is a cream blush. And I love these duos or trios for beginners because it does minimize the product that you have to have with you. So I'm going to place this on our cheekbones. So around, like right above where we put our bronzer and where it meets the concealer is where I'm putting this. Another reason why I love to use this and with a brush is because it allows you to really build that color up. You're not overwhelmed with the amount of color that you put on your face. You just can continue to blend and add if you would like. We don't want to focus it right on the apples of the cheeks. We want to bring it from the apple up. Maybe not all the way to the hairline, but to the side of the eye. For me, that's the perfect place to put our blush. If you want your blush to be long lasting, you definitely need a cream blush. It is very necessary if you want your blush to last all day long, because this starts the color and the powder will seal it in and amplify it. If you've been watching and paying attention, you know what we finna do, right? Sponge. Let's marry the shade with the bronzer and make sure that there are no lines of demarcation. One of the most important places to make sure there's no lines of demarcation is the forehead, because we want a perfect gradient from the lighter shade to the darker shade. The more you want to minimize your forehead, the deeper you allow the darker shade to come in, that bronzer, because it will give an illusion of a smaller forehead. But you can use your sponge or you can use your foundation brush, because that is your medium color, your color that's in the middle. So now is the time to make sure your face looks the way you want it to look, because once we set, there's no going back. If you want to grab your sponge and just kind of go over everything, this is the time where we want to start to smooth out underneath the eyes as well. You always want to look up when you're doing this part so that those creases really disappear. If it is your prerogative to add more product, this is when you would do it. If you feel like you lost any of your shadows or anything like that, this is the time. Now it's time to set the face in place. The setting powders that I love the most right now are the One Size setting powder, as well as the Huda Beauty Easy Bake powders. When I set my concealed areas, which is the lighter areas of the face that we already created, I like to go either into a shade that has kind of like a yellowy tint to it, or more of a peachy type of color. For that reason, we're gonna go into the One Size setting powder. This is a loose powder. The shade we're gonna use in our concealed areas is Rich Peach, which is kind of like a more muted type of yellow powder. And then all over the face, we're gonna go into the shade Dark Deep. For Rich Peach, I did add a little bit to the top here. And we're gonna use these little mini powder puffs. You do need these. This one is from Huda Beauty and this one is from One Size. And they do the best job, even over a sponge, to set your loose powder into your concealer. Before we do this, I'm going to make sure that my creases are gone. I wanna bring you guys close so you can see what I'm talking about. You wanna take your sponge, look up, and get rid of that. Make sure it's as smooth as it possibly can be. And you want to do minimal looking straight or down between this time and setting your powder. Because if you set your face with the creases that I just showed you, that's exactly how your makeup is going to look. But if you set it when it's like this, if you look up, it's nice and smooth, then your makeup will be smooth. I'm gonna take the powder puff, I'm gonna dip it into the powder. Obviously, this is way too much. I'm gonna put it on the back of my hand and swirl it around to kind of make it very thin. Double check one more time that I don't have any lines of demarcation underneath the eyes. I'm gonna look up and I'm gonna start to press that powder right into that concealer. We want to make sure we get a nice thin layer of powder into the concealer so it doesn't crease. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And this peach shade is perfect for someone who is around my complexion. It's not too light, it's also not too dark, and it really helps to maintain the color of the concealer. I'm also adding this down the nose where we highlight it as well. I'm putting the excess on my forehead and just pressing it in. The purpose of this powder is to set your cream colors into place. We're continuing on doing the same thing, but if you think about it, if you leave your house with nothing but cream and liquid products on and someone was to just perhaps slap you across the face during the day, child, we just never know what the day gonna look like. Your entire face will be right on their hand. However, if you set everything with powder, it's less likely for it to come off because it is set into place. If you notice, you can still see where we're shiny because those areas do not have powder on them. But those areas of the face, I do not want to be super, super light. So I'm going into the dark deep shade that I mentioned. And I'm gonna take a pretty fluffy brush into that powder and start to press that loose powder into the face. I'm putting this in all of the areas where I did not put the lighter powder. We don't want to just leave those areas unattended because we need those to be set as well, even though we're about to go in and reinforce those products. While I'm at it, I'm going to smooth out my eyes. It just has like some foundation and concealer just kind of sitting there and creasing up. And I'm going to do a simple little eye look here in a moment. So I'm going to take a small amount of powder and just press it onto my lids, kind of just to prime my lids for whatever it is I'm gonna do with them here in a moment. If you were gonna do something like with some glitter or something more shimmery, I would have just left my lids bare from the beginning or did my eyes first. Since this video is very heavily for beginners, just to get a buttery base, we are not going to be doing any type of baking or anything like that because it's unnecessary for this type of video. The next step is to reinforce the bronzer, so we are about to go into powder bronzer. The bronzer I've been loving recently is this One Size bronzer trio. This one is the deep trio, and I usually go into the shade right here in the middle. I'm gonna use a brush that looks like this. It is a little bit more dense and it has an angle, so we really can be precise on where we put that bronzer. I'm gonna tap into this and apply it where the cream bronzer is. I'm mostly tapping this onto the face, not really swiping it, because that's an easy way to kind of overload your face with too much product. But all of these powder products in general, like I said, they set that cream product in, make sure it goes nowhere, and emphasizes the shades and the colors that we already applied. This will also make it last a lot longer. I'm gonna use an eyeshadow brush to add this around the nose where that cream bronzer was or is. And when I get up here, I'm kind of doing circular motions, like really big ones, to make sure that's nice and blended. Sometimes it's really easy to start to make very harsh lines when it comes to the nose. So again, your sponge will be your best friend to kind of like go over those lines and make sure that there's no super harsh lines. But you don't want to go too hard, and you don't want to swipe because that's going to take off the makeup, and that's not what we want. After I have that bronzer reinforced, I will go back into a deeper loose powder and define underneath that bronzer. I love using a skin tone loose powder for this because it keeps the skin looking pretty natural while also creating that lighter shade underneath that bronzer. If you struggle with smile lines at this point, you can also apply that loose powder into your smile lines. Next, we're going to reinforce our blush with a powder blush. I'm going into the exact same blush duo from Patrick Ta. This is called She Goes to the Gym. I don't want to overwhelm my face with too much powder blush, so I'm going into a brush that looks like this, which is specifically for powder blush. I'm gonna dip it into that shade, tap it off if I need to, and then just start to build that color up exactly where we put that cream. If you would like, you also can put a little bit of blush across the nose. I would just use the excess of what's on the brush, and it just kind of creates that very flushed look all the way across, which can give a very clean and natural look. Before I go in with more fixing spray, I'm gonna go into a highlighter. Highlighter is not something that I skip. I love a good highlighter always and forever, because to me, it just adds a little, you know, a little something to the face and just kind of brings everything up a notch, kind of adds some glam. So I am going into the Skin Lights from Revlon. Y'all, this has been well loved, so don't talk about me. She's pretty dirty and she's actually falling out of the pan. But if I'm not using this one, then I'm using this highlighter from LYS. This one is their Aim High Press Highlighter in Fearless. Or I'm using this Glow Seeker highlighter from Anastasia Beverly Hills. And this is in Enchanted. But we're gonna use a Revlon one today. I'm gonna go into this brush. This is really an eyeshadow brush, but if you use one that's a little bit more tapered like that, it's perfect for a highlighter application. I will put my highlighter right at the tip of my nose. I will also put it down the bridge of my nose as well. Not all the way, but like kind of right in between my eyes. I'll do my Cubix bow as well. I'm a sucker for a brow highlight, so I will also add it underneath my brows. Me in particular, I do not like adding highlight right in the middle of the tear ducts or on the cheeks, so I'm gonna skip that. But if that's your thing, now's the time. I'm gonna add some more MAC Fix Plus spray before we go into the eyes, just to marry everything together. Make it look more like skin, and then I'm gonna let it dry down. So we are about to do the most basic of basic eye tutorials. Don't want to neglect my eyes, so we're gonna make it very quick, very simple, very, you know, cute. If you're a woman of color, I recommend that you always make sure you have a good matte palette. The two that I reach for the most is the Makeup by Mario Master Matte palette. It's very well loved. It has a lot of really great warm tones, and it is an all matte palette. Another one that has some pinker tones in it, mattes and shimmers, is this Born This Way, the Natural Nudes palette from Too Faced. When it comes to eyeshadow, one of the things I will always recommend is to use your bronzer as your deeper crease color. I'm using this eyeshadow brush, and I'm going into circular motions with my bronzer in the corner of the eye. If you want to build up the color, tap the color on there first and then go into circular motions. You can even do the circular motions with a clean brush. That way you know you're not pushing that bronzer too far in areas where you don't want it to be. I love the look of the bronzer instead of like a brown eyeshadow because it kind of gives your face some continuity since we already have the bronzer on. It takes out the guesswork and makes everything the same undertone as well. I'm gonna go into a matte shade on the lid. I'm gonna use this M303 eye packer brush, which is perfect to press and build up a shade on the lid. I love a good matte ombre, you know, eyeshadow. And this is a perfect look. Maybe not for every day, but it could be for every day, child. I wear it every day, but that's just me. I'm different. I'm packing this on, and then on the edges, I'm kind of going softer on the ends and pushing it out into the skin. Over here, I'm just taking it on the side and kind of marrying that color with the bronzer. I'm also going back into the bronzer brush and around the corners on the end to make sure those blend really well. I will kind of push it down into where my concealer is at the bottom just to make sure everything is nice and seamless. Also, please feel free to do your eyes first. That way you don't have to worry about any eyeshadow fallout. This part is very specific to me. I'm gonna go in with a black liner with a flat angled brush. Me in particular, I will use a black eyeshadow liner because I have lash extensions and using a liquid will take off my lashes and I don't want that. But I am doing this. I'm gonna add a little bit of a wing on the end. I'll try to do this up close so you guys can kind of see a very good example of how I do my wing. This is also your time to add your lashes. The face is pretty much done. Now we need a setting spray. The one and only setting spray that I recommend right now is the One Size Until Dawn Mattifying Setting Spray. This is waterproof, y'all, and it will set everything in place. It is literally the only setting spray that I have used that I don't see my tears come through on. You know how you cry and then you have like these streaks down your face? Not with this. Not with this. And I love that for me because I'm a crybaby and I cry almost every day, so it's fine. But this is different from a fixing spray because like I said earlier, the fixing spray kind of melts everything together, makes all the products look more like skin versus the setting spray, which does lock everything in place, kind of creates a strong barrier over the face to keep it from water, from dirt, from dust, like all these things. Not that your makeup ain't gonna get dirty, but you know what I'm saying. It keeps it from showing on the face. We got two more things before the face is done. Let's do some mascara. I in particular love a mascara that gives me very separated and skinnier lashes. So I'm going into the Tartelette XL tubing mascara. You can really see how skinny it is and how it's really gonna separate my lashes. Obviously, I have lash extensions, so I only do this on my bottom lashes, but I do like for them to look separated. Kind of that 70s type of look. That's just my thing, So I did stop and put some curls in the hair, and then I also fixed my nose. So I had put some blush over the nose because it was like giving flushed, but for this look, I kind of wanted to keep it nice and clean and just do blush here. So we did fix the nose, but now we're about to get into lips. For me, my go-to lip is a deep brown liner. This one is MAC Chestnut. And there are some other ones that I think are extremely comparable to this one. I will go ahead and put those up on the screen. I love those down, especially the Maybelline one. But I absolutely love a lipstick and then a gloss over it. So this one is the Makeup by Mario Super Stain Lipstick in Flat Iron. And when you're blending out the lipstick, you either can, you know, blot the lips together, or you can take like a small eyeshadow brush and kind of work to marry those together. Lastly, I'm going into the lip glass from MAC, and I'm gonna put this right on top. And this is our finished look. I'm gonna zoom in, give you guys some shots of what the skin really looks like. I want you to really see how the blending and the marrying of the colors, ensuring that there's no lines of demarcation, using the correct brushes, all of that can create such a beautiful buttery base that's perfect for events that you have, going to church, anything where you want to do a full face, but you still want to look somewhat natural and not cake face. This is the perfect face for you. All right, babe, so that wraps up today's video. I hope it was helpful for you. If you have any other beauty video recommendations, please make sure you leave them in the comment section below, and I'm gonna see y'all on the next video. Bye.